In 17 years of land surveying and GIS work, I have never encountered a parcel that refused to stay where I put it. Coordinates are coordinates. A point is a point. You set your total station, you shoot your angles, you calculate your bearings, and the earth does not argue with you. That is the fundamental assumption of my profession, that the ground beneath your feet has a fixed relationship to every other piece of ground on the planet, and that this relationship can be described with numbers. I need to tell someone what I found in the Harmon County records, because I'm no longer confident that assumption is true, and I am no longer confident that what I found is finished. I work for the Harmon County Assessor's Office in western Oklahoma. My title is GIS Coordinator, which means I maintain the digital parcel maps that determine property tax boundaries for roughly 2,800 square miles of wheat fields, rangeland, and red dirt. In 2019, the County Commission approved a project to digitize all remaining paper records from the vault, plat maps, deed descriptions, survey certificates, everything dating back to the original land-run allotments. Most counties completed this work a decade ago. Harmon County has 12,000 residents and a budget to match, so we were late. The vault is a concrete room in the basement of the courthouse, climate-controlled to the extent that a window unit from 1994 can manage. The records go back to 1901. Most are exactly what you'd expect: quarter-section descriptions, meets and bounds from the territorial days, the occasional oil lease plat. I was scanning roughly 40 documents per day, indexing them by section, township, and range, and uploading them to our GIS server. Tedious work. Important work. The kind of work where your mind goes blank and your hands move automatically. 3 weeks into the project, I scanned a survey certificate dated June 1961. It described a parcel of 0.7 acres, more or less, located in what the legal description identified as the NW4 of the NW4 of Section 14, Township 4 North, Range 26 West. The surveyor was a man named Dale Parsons, license number 308, and his certification was properly notarized. The plat showed an irregular polygon, not a clean rectangle like most agricultural parcels, but something with 7 sides, as if the boundaries followed some natural feature. The monument descriptions referenced a stone set at each corner, which was unusual for that era in western Oklahoma, where iron pins were standard. I plotted the coordinates. The parcel fell in an area I knew well, open rangeland north of Vinson, owned by the Kellner family for 3 generations. I made a note to check for conflicts and moved on. 2 days later, I found another survey certificate for the same parcel. Same 0.7 acres. Same legal description. Same 7-sided polygon. But this one was dated March 1974, performed by a surveyor named Ruth Adkins, license number 1247. The corners were described differently, concrete monuments instead of stone, and the bearings were rotated approximately 4 degrees from the 1961 version. But the shape was unmistakable. The acreage was identical to the 100th. I checked our existing digital records. The Kellner Ranch showed no such subdivision. The quarter section in question was part of a larger 160-acre tract, unbroken, with no easements or carved-out parcels. I assumed the 2 paper surveys were errors, perhaps proposed subdivisions that never went through, misfiled from another county, something mundane. Then I found a third. Dated 1987. Surveyor, Michael Brandt, license 2461. Same parcel, same 0.7 acres, same 7-sided shape. Different monuments again, this time capped iron rebar, and the bearings had shifted another 3 degrees from the 1974 version. I started pulling every document from that section's file folder. By the end of the week, I had found 19 separate survey certificates for the same parcel, spanning from 1958 to 2003. 19 different surveyors, 19 different dates. The shape and acreage were always identical. The corner descriptions changed every time. And the bearings rotated consistently, predictably, by approximately 0.8 degrees per year. I want to be clear about what this means technically. A survey should be a snapshot. The Earth does not rotate relative to its own surface. Bearings reference to true north do not drift. If 19 surveyors independently surveyed the same piece of land over 45 years, and they were all competent, they should all produce the same bearings to within a few seconds of arc. Instead, these plats showed a parcel that appeared to be rotating in place, like a plate spinning on a table, at a rate so slow it would take approximately 450 years to complete one full revolution. I pulled the names of the surveyors and began making calls. Dale Parsons had died in 1983. Ruth Adkins was in a nursing home in Altus. Her daughter told me she had advanced dementia. Michael Brandt was alive, 72 years old, retired to a ranch outside Mangum. I called him on a Tuesday afternoon. He didn't remember the survey. That was reasonable. A career surveyor might perform thousands of jobs. I read him the legal description, the date, his license number. He said he had no client records from that period, having lost them in a shop fire in 1991. I asked if the parcel description meant anything to him. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, 7 sides. I confirmed. He asked me to describe the shape. I did an irregular polygon, roughly the proportion of a hand with the fingers together, widest at the south end, tapering to a narrow point at the north. He said he didn't remember surveying it, but he remembered dreaming about it. He said he dreamed about a piece of land shaped like that for most of the 1980s, and that in the dreams he was always walking the boundary, setting monuments, but the ground was wrong, too soft, too warm, like the skin of something alive. He said the dreams stopped in 1988 and he hadn't thought about them since. He asked me not to call again. I found the remaining surveyors, or rather, I found 14 of the 19. 3 had died. 2 could not be located. Of the 14 I reached, 9 had no memory of performing the survey. 4 recalled vague dreams involving land measurement but no specific memory of a job in Harmon County. 1, a woman named Constance Yarbrough, who had performed the 1996 survey, remembered clearly. She told me she'd been hired by phone. The client identified himself as a representative of a title company she'd never heard of. She couldn't remember the name, but her notes from that year listed it as Meridian Abstract and Title, which I later confirmed does not exist and has never been registered in Oklahoma. He gave her the legal description and asked her to locate and monument the boundaries. She drove to the location on a Saturday in April. She said she found the monuments already in place. The pins were in the ground, flagged with orange ribbon as if someone had been there the day before. She shot the points, computed the closure, and drafted the plat. The closure was perfect, 0 error, which she said was unprecedented in her career. She filed the certificate with the county clerk's office and mailed her invoice to the title company's address, which she described as a P.O. box in Oklahoma City. The check arrived 10 days later, drawn on an account at a bank she confirmed no longer exists. I asked her what the land looked like. She paused, and then said something that made the hair on my arms stand up. She said she couldn't remember. Not that it was unremarkable, she literally could not form a visual memory of what was there. She remembered driving, she remembered her instrument, she remembered the pins in the ground, but the land between the pins was a blank. She said it was like trying to remember a dream after you've been awake too long. I tried to visit the parcel myself. I plotted the most recent coordinates, the 2003 survey, and drove out on a Saturday morning. The location fell along a county road northwest of Vinson, in flat rangeland with nothing distinguishing about it. I pulled over at the section corner, shot my GPS reading, and walked north along the fence line. I walked for 40 minutes. The parcel should have been approximately 800 feet from the road. I crossed open pasture, dry grass, red soil, the occasional mesquite. My GPS showed my position advancing toward the target coordinates, but I never arrived. The pin never appeared. The coordinate I was walking toward remained the same distance ahead of me on the screen, as if I were on a treadmill. I was not disoriented. I was not lost. The numbers simply would not resolve. I returned to my truck and drove the section from a different angle. Same result. The parcel existed precisely and legally in the county records, surveyed, platted, filed, and cross-referenced, but it could not be physically reached. I went to the county clerk's office and pulled the grantor grantee index for Section 14. The 0.7-acre parcel had never been deeded. It had never been sold, gifted, or bequeathed. It appeared in no will, no trust document, no mortgage. It existed only in survey records, as if someone or something was concerned exclusively with establishing its boundaries, but had no interest in ownership. I requested aerial photography from the Oklahoma Geographic Information Council. I pulled every image set available for the area: 1941, 1954, 1969, 1975, 1983, 1995, 2003, 2010, and 2019. In every image, the area where the parcel should exist appeared as undifferentiated rangeland, identical to the surrounding terrain. There was no structure, no disturbance, no visible boundary. But in the 1983 image, and only in the 1983 image, there was a faint discoloration in the grass. An irregular shape, darker than the surrounding ground, approximately 0.7 acres in extent. It had 7 sides. I brought this to my supervisor, the county assessor, a man named Virgil Tate who had held the position for 26 years. I showed him the 19 survey certificates, the rotation pattern, the coordinate analysis, the aerial photograph. He looked at everything carefully. He was quiet for a long time. Then he opened his desk drawer, took out a key, and unlocked the bottom drawer of a filing cabinet I had never seen him open. He removed a manila folder, unmarked, and placed it on his desk. Inside were 123 additional survey certificates for the same parcel. The earliest was dated 1923. The most recent was from 2017, 4 years after the newest one I'd found in the vault. The total count was 142 surveys spanning 62 years, performed by 93 different licensed surveyors. Virgil told me that every assessor since Harmon County's formation had kept this folder. It was passed from one office holder to the next as part of the unofficial transition. No one had ever explained it. No one had ever resolved it. The understanding was that the surveys were to be accepted, filed, and never discussed publicly. I asked him why. He said that in 1971, the assessor at the time, a man named Howard Locke, had attempted to resolve the matter. He'd contacted the Oklahoma Board of Licensure, the State Surveyor's Office, and the County Commission. He'd requested a formal investigation. The County Commission held a closed session on November 3, 1971. Virgil slid a single sheet of paper across the desk. It was the minutes from that session, hand-typed, bearing the signatures of all 3 commissioners. The relevant passage read, "Motion carried unanimously that the matter of the recurring parcel survey in Section 14.4 and 26W shall not be investigated, discussed in open session, or referred to any state or federal agency." This motion is perpetual and survives changes in commission membership. Howard Locke resigned 2 weeks after that meeting. He moved to Wichita and never returned to Harmon County. Virgil said he'd spoken to Locke's widow in 2008. She said Howard never discussed it, but that he had become convinced of something he refused to articulate, and that in the last years of his life he would sometimes stand at the window facing south toward Oklahoma and say only, "It's still counting." I asked Virgil what that meant. He shook his head. But then he told me one more thing. He said that in 2014 he'd received a phone call. The caller identified himself as a representative of Meridian Abstract and Title, the same non-existent company Constance Yarbrough had described. The caller asked whether the county had received the most recent survey certificate. Virgil said yes. The caller thanked him and said, and Virgil was very precise about this, "The boundary is almost complete." The line went dead. Been calculating. If the parcel's bearings have been rotating at 0.8 degrees per year since the first recorded survey in 1923, and if a full rotation is 360 degrees, then the parcel will complete its first full revolution in approximately 2373. That's still 347 years away. But the phrase almost complete suggests something else. I went back and examined the rotation more carefully. The bearings aren't rotating uniformly. They're accelerating. The early surveys show a drift of 0.3 degrees per year. By the 1970s, it was 0.7 degrees. The 2003 survey shows a drift of 1.4 degrees from the previous one, over a span of only 6 years. If the acceleration continues at this rate, and I've modeled it 3 separate ways with the same result, the cumulative rotation will reach 360 degrees within the next 18 months. I don't know what happens when a piece of land that doesn't physically exist completes a full rotation in the legal record. I don't know what it means for a boundary to be complete. I don't know why 93 surveyors were compelled in dreams, by phone calls, through mechanisms I can't identify, to document the edges of something they couldn't see or remember. But I keep thinking about what Constance Yarbrough told me. She said the land between the monuments was blank, not empty, but blank, like something unrendered, like a space that hadn't decided what to be yet. And I keep thinking about what happens when you give something enough paperwork. In this country, legal existence precedes physical existence all the time. You file articles of incorporation and a company exists. You record a deed and ownership exists. You plat a subdivision and lots exist, even before a single shovel of dirt is turned. What if something understood this? What if something learned that the machinery of record keeping, of surveying, of legal description, that this machinery doesn't just document reality? What if it can create it? The rotation will be complete by late next year. 142 surveys, 93 witnesses, 62 years of accumulated documentation, a boundary drawn and redrawn and redrawn, circling closer to closure like a hand drawing itself into existence one finger at a time. I drove out to the site last week. I didn't try to walk to the coordinates this time. I just parked on the county road and watched. The grass was green from the spring rains. The wind moved it in long waves. There was nothing to see, but my GPS unit sitting on the dashboard was displaying coordinates I hadn't entered. It was showing me the boundaries. All 7 sides drawing themselves on the screen one point at a time, as if something out there in the grass knew I was watching and wanted me to see how close it was to being finished. I turned the unit off. I drove home. I haven't been back, but yesterday I received a phone call at the office. The caller identified himself as a representative of Meridian Abstract and Title. He asked whether I would be available to perform a survey in Section 14, Township 4 North, Range 26 West. He said the parcel was 0.7 acres, more or less. He said the monuments were already set. I told him no. I told him I wouldn't do it. There was a long silence on the line, and then the caller said in a voice that was perfectly calm, perfectly professional, and completely without affect, "Someone will." I know he's right. That's what terrifies me, because somewhere right now a surveyor I've never met is having a dream about a 7-sided piece of land. They're walking the boundary in their sleep. The ground is too warm. The monuments are already in place, and when they wake up, they won't remember. But the phone will ring, and they'll drive to a county road in western Oklahoma, and they'll shoot the points, and they'll file the certificate, and the rotation will advance by another degree. And no one in this office will stop it. No one has ever stopped it. The machinery has been running for 62 years, and it doesn't need permission, and it doesn't need understanding, and it doesn't need anyone to believe in it. It just needs one more survey.